Yo, people, lateness is greatness. Welcome back. You already know what time it is. It's time for a tactical one. All right. I'm really looking forward to this because I haven't really talked tactics with you guys in a while. And I thought no better way to get this done than to have Daniel, son of Chelsea, on the channel, and Elizabeth. It's been a while since I've had them on. So, Daniel, first of all, man, how are you doing?
Really good. We were just having a discussion before going live about, I think it was the last time I was on the channel, I think it was pre the Atletico first leg. So, I mean, in terms of Chelsea and in terms of time, I mean, that so much, the amount of games we play, just so much has happened since then. So, and luckily very good stuff, it's a bit surreal, as I'm sure we'll get to, the fact that we could actually be in a Champions League final by Thursday, which is just, it still hasn't really sunk in for me. But it's going to be an interesting discussion because unfortunately we couldn't do the stream on Saturday because I thought Fulham was a really interesting game to delve into tactically.
Yeah, 100%. And Elizabeth, I think last time I had you on was with Olivia, and I don't even know how long ago that was. Definitely a couple months now. So how have you been?
Oh yeah, I think last time I was in New York for the holidays because I remember I was on at like 6 a.m. or something crazy my time. But yeah, I'm good. Today was a bank holiday in Spain, so I had the day off, which is really nice. And I've just been literally chilling, not on Twitter during the blackout or anything. So yeah, I'm excited to get back into it.
Lovely stuff. Well, listen, people, big up to the chat. Loads of you in here already, nearly 100 of you already in here. Listen, bless up to yourselves. I thought it would be a good way to ease our way into the Real Madrid game, just to talk about a little bit what happened over the weekend. And you're at the midway point now. We'll kind of brush up on Real Madrid as well. There's been some injury updates and what's going on with that. And then obviously anything else we dive into with your questions that you leave in the chat, which are always great. Like I said, I really want to talk about that system and the tactics in the Fulham game, because when the lineup went out, everybody kind of like lost their minds. And in a way, I think Mason Mount and Gilmour playing in a pivot together kind of scared people because it was kind of inexperienced. We saw Mason Mount against Brighton. I felt certainly I'd prefer him higher up the pitch because I think the role that he plays getting into the half spaces and turning. I mean, there's this lovely video that went up of Mason Mount's turns. They're ridiculous. Like the way that he's able to shield the ball as it rolls across him and then, move forward and progress the ball has been brilliant. So I think he was vital in that position. And when he was moved back against Brighton, I was just like, it's kind of just taking the sting out of the attack. The urgency is kind of gone. And then to throw in Gilmour, that was something that a lot of people wanted to see. And I was quite excited to see him, but there was no experience next to him. So, I mean, Daniel obviously wasn't on Twitter, didn't get your thoughts on there. So, obviously on the channel, you would have gave your thoughts. But just to let everybody know again, what was you thinking when you saw that pivot?
I said on my preview that I felt that Mount would be in the pivot alongside Kante or Georgie instead of Gilmour. I did not expect both of them to start. So I was looking at that lineup and I was like, okay, I think Tuchel has to rotate. It's nice he's resting both Jorginho and Kante, who've played so much football. I would have preferred it, especially I sort of went into the game thinking we need to rest Kante here. Like I think it's just the perfect time to do so. And I was curious to see what was going to happen. I mean, I think that it was great to see Gilmour get a chance because since January, I think it has been a bit frustrating at times. I think there have been games where I particularly wanted Gilmour to be given a chance. I think about that West Brom game in particular, and that's not in hindsight. Me and Jay were saying that on our podcast pre-West Brom, so it's not like we were saying it after the 5-2.
Yeah.
I felt that there have been moments where maybe Tuchel could have given Gilmour a bit more game time. So it was nice to see him being given an opportunity at this period of the season and have a trust in what was a big Premier League game. There's no two ways about it. I mean, it's easy in hindsight and also with the type of opposition to think it's not a big game, but it was a must-win game for Chelsea. So I think that one thing that I think we've constantly come back to, and this was, pre-Real Madrid when I was on Twitter as well, people having a go at Tuchel, you've got to trust Tuchel at this point. Everything he's done, all the big decisions he's made, all the ones we've questioned, I'd say 99.9% of the things Tuchel's done at Chelsea so far, he's got absolutely spot on. There's a reason he's done something. And I felt that it was a type of game where Chelsea needed to be a bit more daring and expressive. And I'm sure as we'll get to in terms of the formation, I think it paid off. The risk he took absolutely paid off.
Yeah, no, 100%. And someone saying here that I did say that Gilmour would be the new up and coming talent. I don't think that's a crazy thing. I think a lot of people are probably speaking on Gilmour before I did, for sure. He's just so technically sound. That's what really stands out for me. And under a progressive manager like Tuchel, we saw at times he was really pressed and he was still able to evade it and be calm and pass out from the back. Elizabeth, what did you make of the pivot when it went out? Because it was kind of maybe the most surprising thing about the team, I think I would probably say.
Well, for me, I was really hoping that Gilmour would get a start because, even though we knew that it was a must-win game, I was thinking, well, it's Fulham, and if you're going to need to rest Conte and Jorginho for that Real Madrid game that's coming up on Wednesday, and Kovacic wasn't fit yet. So I was hoping that they would actually get rested for that game instead of playing them consecutively, especially with Conte's injury records that he's kind of been like up and down. So I wasn't like super surprised, but I was like, oh, I'm really happy to see Gilmour get some game time. But the thought did run through my mind about that Brighton game when Mason Mount was playing lower. I felt like, Mason Mount is going to be playing a little bit deeper, and I didn't feel that we were as effective in the Brighton game when he played deeper, because I think that he's just so integral to the attack and to starting it and to finding that space. And we saw that in this Fulham game. So I initially thought that he was going to be playing further back, but then I was like quite delighted to see that Billy was actually kind of like a lone six and Mason was actually further up on the pitch.
Yeah. They kind of played 2 8s, quite attacking, 3-5-2. Obviously, the wing backs of wingers, midfield, wide midfielders, whatever you want to call them, they're always going to push up quite high against a defensive team. I think Fulham, they played quite well in that first half. They really came out. I said it in my preview. I personally thought that they would be at it. Scott Parker wouldn't let them turn up and just roll over. We saw West Brom come to us, Southampton as well. Those were the two comparisons I made. West Brom mainly because they're in a relegation battle. Well, they were fighting relegation when they played us and they knew that they had to win to have any chance of survival. And then Southampton as well, because they were on a losing run. I think they had like 5 straight defeats before we played them and drew 1-1. Fulham had a similar run as well. So you can never make any assumptions. But I think when I saw Ziyech dropping into those pockets, well, not into pockets, but dropping deeper and allowing Mason to go forward, and they were kind of interchanging, was kind of nice. There was a few times Billy was kind of left on his own, and a lot of people were saying throughout the game that maybe he's getting a bit isolated. It was never really going to be as defensively solid as the previous experienced pivot. But I was very happy to see it, because I think Mason under Lampard, a lot of people speak about Mason's improvement, the statistics under Tuchel and whatnot, and maybe there has been some improvement. But even under Lampard this season, he was very, very good. He's playing that 8 role in the 4-3-3, creating a lot of opportunities, and everybody was saying it's kind of like a new player in this position, and kind of the position everybody wanted to see him. Going forward, do you guys want to see more of this, Daniel, or are you happy with the current setup? Because it raises the question of playing 2 strikers, which obviously Werner's used to at Leipzig. He played with 2 strikers there. It gets that extra midfielder in. We know Loftus-Cheek, we spoke about in the press conference, Gallagher, all these players come back, maybe there's more room for them. How do you feel about it?
I don't suspect Tuchel will be using this formation much for the run-in. I don't, because I think of the type of games, I think it was a unique opportunity, and I think it was a calculated risk where I think Tuchel realised with Fulham's 4-4-2, they were going to have to come out. They had to win the game. Brighton won before us, which I think Brighton like 10 points clear, 9 or 10 points clear of Fulham. So it became a must-win game. And I think it was a glimpse into next season, actually, what we saw on Saturday. I've heard from multiple people, and I hate to use this term because it's a lazy term, in the know, the likes of, and this is not even like secret news, like, this is Dan McCarthy and Simon Phillips were saying this on their latest podcast. I've had people who I know who are very connected tell me this, that it looks like it's going to be a 4-4-2, potentially some sort of variation on a 2-striker system next season at Chelsea. And I think Chelsea need to be more daring next season, in particular in games like Fulham. Yeah. It's been my one frustration with Tuchel so far in games like Brighton, in games like West Brom, in games like Leeds and Southampton, those drop points. I'll take away the Wolves game because that was such a weird occasion. He only had 24 hours to prepare for it. But if Chelsea want to win a Premier League title, if we want to really compete with Man City, it's those games where Chelsea are going to have to be more daring, I think, and take more risks, because we can't be dropping as many points as we have. Tuchel in the big games is perfect. He's shown it already. He's shown it multiple times. He is the perfect manager, I think, for big games. It seems that, going into Fulham, I was more nervous about Fulham than I was about Real Madrid. And that was pre the first leg against Real Madrid, because I trust Tuchel's Chelsea in big games because he gets them right. He's much, I think, more comfortable at the moment of being a bit more pragmatic, of setting the team deeper at times, counter-attacking performances like we've seen against Liverpool and Manchester City in the FA Cup semi-final. It's why I back Chelsea if we get to the final of the Champions League to potentially win it.
Yeah,
I think that those are those things that I think have really impressed me about Tuchel. And as well, I think I was saying at my channel yesterday, the amount of attacking talent we've invested in, I think it'd be such a waste if this team, this crop of players, the likes of Kai Havertz, Timo Werner, Ziyech, Mason Mount, you could throw Callum Hudson-Odoi in there, Christian Pulisic, obviously. If we go through a generation of players, basically, and Chelsea just sort of a reactive side, a counter-attacking side, I don't think that's why we got so excited last summer. Now, that doesn't mean that you can play that risky, expressive football every single week, very naturally. But I think it does mean that next season, just I think offensively, if Chelsea want to catch Man City, if we want to actually compete for a Premier League title, this is the type of performance you want to see. And just, sorry to keep on rambling, just one more point about Ziyech. What I loved about Ziyech on Saturday was you could see a few sloppy passes. It was quite clear it was a new formation, and I think pre-season is going to be really exciting to see if we can work on this a little bit more. Ziyech was finally getting into those positions and creatively dominating the game, like we saw back in the autumn when he really impressed us under Lampard, where he became the creative sort of hub of the team. And under Tuchel, he struggled at times with the rotation, with the injuries, the lack of fitness. I think the fact that his role sometimes has been a little bit more limited and restricted. What you saw in there was he had the ability to be a right winger, to drift all across the pitch, that freedom that I think Ziyech needs to really excel. So that was a positive for me as well.
Yeah, I think when you talk about Ziyech and Kai Havertz as well, because I've seen a lot of Chelsea fans, thinking, where's the creativity in this team? Those two signings were meant to be the creativity. I remember watching Havertz at the back end of the lockdown last season in the Europa League as well. Some games he was very creative, even when he didn't really look like in his mannerisms, he didn't really want to be at Bayer Leverkusen anymore. I think Werner had already made the switch to Chelsea. He was very much, his head was on moving as well. He was still effortlessly creating chances, and I think he's the higher up creator for me. And then Ziyech would be the one that would be a lot deeper, and kind of how we saw on the weekend, he would drop into those midfield spaces and maybe try and emulate some sort of Fabregas vision from the deeper positions and see if he can get involved there. Elizabeth, obviously the two striker formation was something that we kind of do see it every now and then, because even when we play the three, Mason Mount does naturally drop in, and then Werner, we know as a second striker, will naturally push up, and if Kai's playing up there, we know we're going to see them more advanced. But it was kind of like the clear identity, I guess, over the weekend. Do you feel like it gives any chance for Abraham, Giroud, these kind of fringe strikers who we haven't really seen too much of, to get into the formation a bit more? Do you think it really doesn't really make a difference for them?
Well, for Giroud, I think that he's just kind of on his way out, and he's been a great servant of the club. But just from the reports that I've read, like Dan said, all over, I don't have any inside sources or whatever, but just like The Athletic or Dan and Sai's pod or whatever, it seems that Giroud is on his way out. So I don't really see a way for him to get back into the team. And he probably wants to finish his career playing more or less more consistent time. So I completely understand it. And as for Tammy, it's a really weird situation, because I really like Tammy, and he's still Chelsea's top goal scorer, I think, even though he hasn't played in 3 months, which says a lot. And I think that, I don't really know why Tuchel isn't selecting him. Perhaps he just doesn't like something that he sees in training, or he doesn't feel that he fits his specific system. But perhaps if you have another spot available up for grabs, you could have the possibility of having Tammy on there as well. But just from what I've seen in the past couple of months, Chelsea have been struggling to score goals. That's no secret. We're only winning by 1, maybe 2 goals in some games, but really it's been 1 goal wins. And Tammy still hasn't been getting minutes, even though you're struggling to score goals. So I feel really bad for Tammy, but I just don't know if he's going to get back, if he has enough time to get back into the team at this point.
It's going to be interesting because, everybody's kind of Giroud's running out of contract. He's basically going to leave. But Tammy's one of those guys where everybody kind of put their hat on him leaving because of the lack of game time. But when you see the likes of Lukaku speaking with Sky Sports, and he's very happy at Inter Milan, and a lot of people kind of didn't think about his love with Conte and the fact that they have a very strong relationship, and the fact that Chelsea wanted him, it was when Conte was in charge, and that's the guy that was really pushing it more so than most. And after winning the league title, it's going to take a lot to get him out of there. It will take a lot. Harry Kane, we know Tottenham, we don't really deal with them from a business perspective, and Haaland, listen, I don't even know if that, again, it looks like he could potentially stay. It wouldn't be surprising for me if all of these big names just didn't move. So you never know. Tammy might even still be here next season, even if the club or the manager's looking to move him on, just because you can't bring in maybe someone of the right quality to replace him. This chat here, when it comes to the news on these guys, Kova, I read, is not going to make the game. Certainly not going to start anyway. I wouldn't expect it. And I think you definitely would have seen, got a clue from that when Tuchel rested both Jorginho and Kante, that Kova was not going to start against Real Madrid, because he's clearly going to go with those two. Kova on the bench would be the most you could hope for at this point. Rudiger, I think he's going to be wearing some sort of face shield. And it's funny because I never, ever see any player, any other club have to wear this. Apart from
the bat. We got another. I don't know if Rudiger's joined this club before, but Chelsea have the Batman Club. I like to call it like for years we've had this where every single player, mostly defender, but even like Diego wore it a few times. Like I think they just passed the same one around at the training at Cobham to everyone, because you're gonna, as a Chelsea player, you're probably gonna have to wear it at some point during your career.
I think Palafra wore it. Terry definitely wore one, but it was a little bit different. Cahill, Fabregas, Torres, so many people have worn this mask. So I think that's a really good situation. And then Mason Mount, he did pull up, but I think he's fine. I would be shocked if he missed that game. I think he'll find a way to play that game. So
Tuchel said he took him off. That was his decision to take him off, rather than the medical team telling him to take him off.
Precaution, huge precaution he's playing there. Even the medical team, right? So there you go. So I think Rudiger and Mason Mount will play. I think Rudiger might play with the face mask, and I think Kova, the best you can hope for from Kova is on the bench. Let's look in the chat. Okay, you guys are spamming names. I have no idea why. Oh, you're spamming names for the face mask. So Diego Costa's in there, Aspilicueta, Pedro,
Ramirez. I feel like Ramirez
maybe as well. Ivanovic, Dembaba.
We said Pedro. I feel like Pedro's.
Yeah. I was wondering why everybody was spamming names, and then now I know why. Cahill. So
Czech. Did you say Czech? Czech definitely were at some point.
We're definitely the Batman Club. It's very and it's fun. Like I said, I've never seen any other club have to do this. So I don't know. I really don't know. I don't think Drogba wore it. I don't think Anelka maybe. I don't know. At this point, you're just confusing me. But yeah, it's definitely ripped in our tradition now at this point, and maybe that's a sign that we're going to win. I know Dubois has a thread that just continues to keep on going.
I don't know if anyone wore a face mask against Barca in 2012. If someone can find it out, I don't think they did.
Yeah, people have definitely been loving that thread. It's starting to become.
He posted that the ref that refed the semi-final was born on November 23rd or whatever it was, and our ref is also born on November 23rd. Like, what are the chances of that? That's too much.
I'm starting to think he's making it up, but he's actually not. That's the funny thing.
I can imagine on Wednesdays, like the temperature in London was this on the same day in 2012.
If we don't win, by the way, that thread is going to be...
It's getting deleted instantly, isn't it?
Rival fans are just waiting. They bookmarked it and they're waiting. If we do not go through on Wednesday, my God, it will be covered in rival slander. But I mean, on to continuation with the midfield before we move on to the Real Madrid game as well. I mean, like the reason why I bring it up, because obviously it was very interesting to watch over the Fulham game, but he obviously spoke about Loftus-Cheek in the press conference, comparing him to, well, not comparing him, but he reminding him of a Michael Ballack type player. And we used to call him Lewisham Ballack for anyone that did that. So that was quite nice. If he's just doing this just to make the fans love him even more, he's doing a brilliant job, by the way, because he's getting all of the little detail that we talk about. Obviously, we know Conor Gallagher at West Brom is another player that would probably suit that formation or suit a three-man midfield. Just on a numbers game, these guys would have a better chance of getting back in if they got in there. Barkley's kind of gone off off of Aston Villa. He's not really as an important figure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Aston Villa. He was really good at the start of the season with Greenish, but then he's kind of just gone off. So, I mean,
he's had a few injuries as well.
Yeah. I mean, I have to ask, do you guys think there's anybody from the loan system, in any position actually, that you think has a shout of getting into this team in this kind of formation? I know you spoke about 4-4-2 as well, potentially 3 at the back. Anybody that's out there that you think could get in at the moment next season, the first team? I'll start with you, Daniel.
Top of my list, and he's been top of my list for a while, is Mark Guehi. If Tuchel sticks with back 3, I think that's perfect. And I kind of roll my eyes a lot of the centre-back talk at the moment. I don't feel that's an area Chelsea should be and need to be spending a lot of money in. I feel the only reason we'd be spending a lot in that area is if, say, a Rudiger was to leave because of his contract situation. Varane, yeah, good player, but, does he significantly improve what we already have? With Thiago Silva for another season, with Christensen in the form he is, with Rudiger in the form he is, not entirely sure. And I'd like to see Guehi be promoted. So I'd say that's the most realistic one, because we have been for many years. We are so stacked in midfield. I mean, it's just we're stacked in midfield at the moment without these loanees. And Chelsea have got to get some profit on some of these players. I think that it could potentially fund more moves. In terms of those midfielders you speak, I've been the biggest Ruben Loftus-Cheek fan for years, and I'd love to see him succeed at Chelsea, but I just think that, I think he'd be perfect for Chelsea. I think Ruben at his best, as we saw at a brief spell under Sarri, was exactly what our midfield has been lacking. It looks like Kai potentially maybe playing further up the pitch, so that goal-scoring midfielder sort of that we hoped would be, that's not really going to be his role at Chelsea now. And Chelsea lack goals from midfield. I'd even argue we lack a lot of creativity from our central midfield. Apart from Jorginho scoring penalties, Kovacic, despite always good form and good performances, and the same with Georgie, neither of them for me are those sort of players that I think are really giving enough creatively in midfield, especially when he's playing 2 in midfield, a double 6, which stay much more reserved than they were on Saturday. So I think it's so much is on that front 3. Ruben can really only play as a number 8 for me. I think that's probably the best position for him in a 4-3-3, which Tuchel, isn't really playing. Maybe a 4-2-2-2 that, maybe Ruben could fit in one of those more attacking roles. But you think about, it's just the pure numbers at the moment. You look at the wide players, Hakim Ziyech, Christian Pulisic. We forget, I think, a lot of the time about Callum Hudson-Odoi. This is another guy who could be given a lot of time. It's tough. It really is. And Mason Mount's guaranteed a place somewhere in the team. So, and that's going to be in some sort of midfield / sort of inverted winger role. So it's tough. I think that Conor Gallagher preseason, I think it's exciting to actually have a preseason again, because maybe some of these players will be given an opportunity. It's a political move from Tuchel to say, I'll see him when he comes back. As excited as we can all get about Ruben, because we'd love to see him come back and flourish at Chelsea. I don't know. I think that at this point, the club maybe, the problem is, well, this has been pointed out by people, the contract he's on, the wages he's on in the current market for what Mourinho would want for Ruben. Yeah. Is he going to be sold this summer? I don't think he is. I think it would just be another loan move. So it's very hard to say at the moment. I'd say Guehi for me is the one player I'd put a lot of money on, not a lot of money on, but some money on to break in, or at least be given a significant chance in pre-season to break in.
Yeah, we had a Bakayoko spam, so I just put him on the screen just so he'd stop spamming his name. But Elizabeth, what about you? Who do you think could break into this? Because Tuchel, he does promote young players. He promotes the young players and develops them as well. He's definitely on board with doing that, but at the same time, it's a very competitive squad. And when they're performing this well, if this team does win the Champions League, you'd have an argument to say none of the senior starting 11, 12, 13, 15, core unit of this team should really be going anywhere after a win like that. So what would you say in terms of who could get through?
I don't know if anybody could really get through. I think like Daniel said, Gurhi might be like the top option. I think also in the back of my mind, I'm thinking how good would it be for his development to be able to be mentored by somebody like Thiago Silva while he's still at the club.
Yeah.
And then obviously like I have to say Ruben Loftus-Cheek because I'm a massive fan of his, but do I see him necessarily getting through into the team? I don't know. Like he's just not the same player that he was, and I really hope that he can get back to that. But I don't know if he's going to be able to do that at Chelsea. But I would be over the moon if he could. And then Ethan Ampadu, I think like some people might have forgotten about as well. Like I'm a big fan of his. But again, he's kind of in that center back or DM role, and those positions we're really stacked anywhere that we are. And I think like his loan was really unfortunate because when it was to Sheffield, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like they were a really great team last season and now they've been relegated. So I don't think that it was like the experience that he deserved or should have gotten. So I think those are the three that I want to keep my eye on. I think maybe we'll see one person included. Also depends on outgoings. Like Daniel mentioned, the market, we just don't know who's going to stay, who's going to go, who's going to get loans. Like there's a lot of different things to take into consideration, but probably out of all of them, I think that I could see it being the most possibility for a center back to get into the team, because otherwise we're like anywhere else, we're pretty stacked.
Yeah. Tomori is another interesting one that people talk about. Obviously, AC Milan are being very stingy with the money. I think the fee that we've given them, I think 28 million euros or something like that to pay if they want to keep him permanently. I think it's very reasonable. Obviously, we know his value is quite high, but in AC Milan, maybe financially they're trying to be clever with it. I think another thing to take away from that Fulham game, that to take us transition into the Real Madrid game, was the chemistry and understanding. Not the obvious one between Werner and Havertz, because they play with Germany. They should have that. And Werner at this point is starting to become more of a creator than a goal scorer. The assist was really good. Good passing between the defenders and into Kai, who finished both of his chances quite well. But the chemistry and understanding between Kai and Mason Mount was... it was just beautiful. It really was. And that touch for the assist, oh my God, grief. It was just, I mean, the development of this kid is just, it's wonderful. It really is wonderful to see because, he's a player that I think last season when he was playing in the advanced roles, you could see there was improvements to be made, whether it was from striking the ball, because at Vitesse, he was very good in that, for me, he put up similar, statistics to a Ziyech or Van der Beek or one of these guys at Ajax, taking to account Vitesse are not as good as this Ajax team who have just won the league again. He was doing similar things to what they were doing at 18 years old or whatever it was at 19, 18 at Vitesse. So he was having a great time out there. And then obviously the Derby loan, he has that as well. And he comes into the Chelsea team. And I was quite surprised that his final ball and all these things weren't as polished as it was obviously in other divisions, but you're coming up a league, so you have to give him time. But this season, he's just kicked onto a whole nother level. It's ridiculous. His final ball is much better. I think his dribbling is very underrated, the way that he's able to go 1v1 and create opportunities for himself. And that assist was brilliant. But him and Kai, I think, could we have stumbled onto something there for Real Madrid? Because I think if we're talking about Real Madrid going into the game, there's a selection of about 4 attackers, because obviously Hudson-Odoi is not getting much game time. We'll get onto him in a minute. But Pulisic, Kai, Werner and Mount, you'd say would be your key 4 to be challenging for those 3 positions. Ziyech obviously has Champions League pedigree as well, but I think he would just potentially be quite a little bit, just a little bit below them in terms of the pecking order. It's a very difficult question, Daniel, but who would you select for your front 3 out of those 4? Because it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy because I think some of it as well comes down to Tuchel's approach to this game. A second leg. Chelsea have an advantage in a sense where you'd say, of course, a 0-0 draw gets us through, but I don't want to be sitting back for 90 minutes personally, because I don't think it'd be good for our health. I don't think Wednesday's game is going to be good for our health anywhere it goes, because Champions League semi-final second leg. But I like the front 3 of Werner, Ziyech and Mount. I think those 3 combine very well. You saw it again on Saturday, where Ziyech should have scored. It could have been 2 assists for Werner on the day.
Yeah.
You think back to the Atletico Madrid second leg where Werner set up the goal for Ziyech. You think about the FA Cup semi-final against Man City, the way those three set up the winner. The Liverpool away game back in March, those three started together. So I'd say on evidence, on first impression, I'd say, you maybe look to Pulisic. The issue is Pulisic has suddenly decided to turn into the Pulisic of last season, and it's wonderful. He's a big game player for Chelsea. He really is. He steps up in the big occasions. And I just can't not have Pulisic in the team for me, because there was moments, and I felt this watching him last season. There were moments watching Pulisic last week in that first leg where I was like, it's one of those, it's turning, I think I may have tweeted it, it's turning into one of those games where it's just pass the ball to Pulisic, because he just seemed to be on sort of that energy where it's like, I'm going to be the best player in the world tonight, and he can be unplayable. And that's the level of player we have and the talent we have. And it's wonderful to see, because I know many of us were having conversations post West Brom, about his fitness once again.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that he's regained form. So I can't believe he won't be in the front three. Mount as well takes up another position. He just does in that, unless Tuchel's going to stick with the formation, I think that then we know Mount's. So then you're left with one position.
Yeah.
And I can't not feel that like Timo Werner's the most likely to be in that three for me, because given what Tuchel's done consistently, I think the transition opportunities potentially for Chelsea, it may not be the best chemistry front three. As I say, I think if Chelsea want to sit back, I think Ziyech, Mount and Werner is the best front three we can play if Tuchel really wants to sit back. But we weren't sitting back against Real Madrid. The game did not play out in the way I expected it to last week. Chelsea were pressing a lot higher. So if Chelsea have a lot more of the ball, then I'd go for Kai potentially in that front three alongside Pulisic and Mount, because I think to actually hold up the ball, I think Werner can sometimes leave a lot to be desired, in build up. So I'm sorry, it's a muddled answer, because it's a tough answer. I mean, is it a positive that you have so many informed players in a sense, players that you can pick, or is it a negative that you don't have that tried and trusted player at the moment that, or a guaranteed front three? I could sort of see it both ways, because as we saw with Werner's finishing, this game is going to be defined by very fine margins, as it has been with Thomas Tuchel, and that may be what lets Chelsea down in the end. I think that's a concern. So I do not envy Thomas Tuchel's position going into this game, and he's the man to do it, man. Like he's the guy to get it right. So I think that whatever he picks, I'm going to back. But that's just my opinions based on the evidence of what I've been seeing. It's a mess. It really is, to try and gauge what is the front three.
I feel, Elizabeth, I'm giving you time there. I'm going to give you a bit more just as I read out this super chat here from Rokar. Werner, Havertz and Pulisic, best front three. For me, personally, in a game like this, you can't not have Mason Mount, because I think, as I said, against Manchester City, Mason Mount is the only player that will funnel back into the midfield and make it a three. And when you're going against Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, you need to go man for man. You need to match them 3 for 3. You can't be outnumbered. And I think I saw Mason Mount tracking De Bruyne and just playing just off the ball, was just ahead of him in terms of his movements to block off the passing lanes. And that is a crucial role that when the game's going on, you might not look at it because we're in our defensive shape and it's not the most entertaining thing because we don't have the ball at the moment and we know we're waiting to get it back or to press to get it back so we can start our attack. But to block off those passing lanes is crucial. And I think, yes, we know Kante has loads of energy, but the energy that we showed against Real Madrid to, close down Kroos, Modric, take them out of the game and not make it so easy for them to pick up their head and make the pass. Mason Mount's a big part of that as well. And Jorginho is not the quickest as well. That's not his game. His game is to be sitting there, control, create triangles, get on the ball. He can make his interceptions as well, but in tighter spaces, whereas Mason Mount and Kante can cover more ground. And I think you're going to need that against Real Madrid. So I definitely can't have a front three without him. And I think Pulisic as well, I really can't disagree there, because I think when it comes to the big moments, Arsenal, Manchester City last season, even Liverpool away where we lost, he steps up. He's a big game player. And this is a game for big players, I'll let Elizabeth chime in here on the front three before I give who my final person in that front three. Elizabeth, who do you think? Who would you go with?
Well, it's actually like really funny because when I was on the byline, when you were supposed to be on as well, but
My Wi-Fi is just
your
peaked.
Wi-Fi issue. Alex asked like to the patrons, "Oh, who do you think is going to be in the starting 11?" And the first guy goes, "Oh, I think it's going to be Mount, Pulisic, and Havertz. I can't see anybody disagreeing with this." And we were like, "What? I think we're going to see a load of different combinations of front threes," and then this first 6 people all said Mount, Pulisic, Havertz, and we were like, "Oh my god!" And then the last person said Mount, Pulisic, Werner.
Okay.
So it was very heavy in that direction. Just to echo what you guys have said, you have to start Mason Mount. Like, he is integral to this team. He's Chelsea's player of the season, and I think that he's going to be super important for just that energy, the pace, finding the spaces in between the lines. He's always like drifting all over the pitch, and it makes it like hard to track and hard to keep formation. So I definitely think that Mace is going to start. And he has a goal threat in him. Like, we've seen him score in bigger games against Liverpool, against Porto as well. Pulisic has to start as well, I think. Like, he scorched the goal against Real Madrid, and I think that like you guys have been saying, he's just a big game player. He's very fast, very pacey. He can counterattack. He gets into tight areas. He attracts defenders and players towards him, which creates space elsewhere on the pitch as well. So, and we know that he's a goal scorer, and he's just going to take a shot, and sometimes
very
he's going to
composed as well.
Yeah. I think the other thing with Pulisic, and he kind of spoke about this, is that he said, when you start scoring goals, you feel like you can score goals, and then you score more goals just because you have that confidence. And it's so important to have that when you're playing, especially when you're trying to score. So I really see that he's starting to find his form again, and he's starting to get more confidence and taking on more shots. And so I definitely think you need to start him. And then I'm honestly 50-50, because I feel like Tuchel might start Werner, because he's been starting Werner in all of these big games for his pace. Madrid are going to need to attack. If it's tied, we go through. So we know that they need to get a goal, and they're going to know that. So perhaps we could see, a lot of space, and Timo can exploit that with his pace. And like you've been saying, like, Timo has been creating more. He hasn't been scoring goals, but he's been winning penalties. He's been getting assists, and he tends to link up with these players. But the problem with Timo, I think, is that he's just low on confidence, and we really need somebody to be very clinical. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that in this game. Like, I really hope that he can, but I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous that if he starts and he misses a chance, like, maybe there goes his confidence or something like that. So kind of for those reasons, I would prefer to see Havertz play and do Pulisic, Mount, Havertz, just because I think, he scored 2 goals at the weekend, so you're rewarding that. He's a goal scorer. He's also very pacey. He is taller, so it helps you on the set pieces as well. We know that Madrid are probably going to have Ramos coming back into play. Mendy is also coming back, and Ramos is such a threat from set pieces, so it gives you that little bit of height advantage, the same reason why you're playing Azpilicueta at right wing back instead of at right center back. Those couple of inches could help. And I think that, Kai can also get a job done, but, no matter which front three we see, I think that, I trust in Tuchel to make the right decision. But not only that, you have 5 subs in the Champions League, and we're probably going to see all of these players on the pitch at some point. So it's just a matter of which ones get 60 minutes and maybe which ones get 30.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And just before I give my view, Rokar with this super chat says Tuchel wants Mount in midfield. He won't play him up front. Fulham game, you can see he is trying to move him into midfield. I wouldn't, like Daniel said earlier, I wouldn't take too much from that Fulham game in terms of the short-term or medium-term future and for the rest of the season, just because it was clear that he had one Kova injured and Jorginho and Kante needed resting as well. I think there's a lot of pluses to having Mount higher up the pitch in that front three, because he's very, very energetic, and it's kind of a ripple-on effect to the rest of the attackers to keep their movements quick as well. Sometimes they can be a bit sluggish, and I think he's a good person for instigating that. Second of all, he's a shooter. He can actually shoot the ball, so he's one of our actual best shooters in terms of even from range, great long shots, and you can count on him to get a goal at any point in time as well, which is important in this team. There's a lack of goals. And like I said earlier, the fact that he can turn in the half spaces, I think he makes it incredibly a lot easier for the likes of Jorginho when he's making his forward passes, and to be quicker on the ball. Cover as well, when Mount is playing those half spaces, because he shows for it, you're almost forced to pass it into him. So he takes up very good positions. When it comes down to this debate of the striker, I think I'm leaning towards Kai Havertz, because I think this is going to be a long match. And what I mean by that is, even though Real Madrid have to score, they don't have to throw the bucket at us at early doors. And I think they'd be stupid to do so, because if they do that, they could potentially be playing into our hands where we could hit them on the break. What would be clever from them is to play this game like chess. Last 15, 20 minutes, if it's still 0-0, this becomes incredibly difficult to watch for Chelsea, because one goal and suddenly, they're going through. And we know this team going forward is not the best in terms of getting goals. So it's going to be a tight game anyway. I think Real Madrid, they're going to have Ramos back as well. I'm kind of putting 2 and 2 together with their game over the weekend. They played a 4-2-3-1. Hazard played number 10, Varane, and Metallo played in centre back as well. I think Sergio Ramos will come back into that. Varane picked up a knock, so he might not play. He has an injury concern. I think they might go back to a back 4, because they looked so out of sorts against us in the 3. They didn't, we looked very comfortable in the 3. Of course, we've been playing it for months. Them, on the ball, they just didn't really take up the positions you'd expect them to. Kroos was going very deep as well to try and get the ball. They just didn't look themselves. Marcelo at left wing back as well didn't look right. So I think they'll go back to a back 4 and play to their strengths. And I think because the game's going to be so tight, I can't afford personally to be seeing chances be missed. And for that reason, I would go Kai Havertz up front, because I know he's the most clinical out of him and Timo Werner. He's got a bit of pace as well, so you can still play him behind. That's another point. I think out of all of our forwards, he's got a bit of everything. He's got Abraham's height. He's got, the pace in behind. He was very quick in Bundesliga, very deceptively quick. So just because you don't play Werner doesn't mean you can't take advantage of a high line with Kai. And then on top of that as well, the heading ability that Giroud possesses, he's got a bit of that because of his height. And we saw that at Leverkusen when he played false 9. So I'd go with Kai from the start. And I think when the game gets towards the end now, and if Real Madrid really have to push, last 20 minutes, great time to bring on Timo Werner, because then suddenly Ramos, who loves to get forward, by the way, at his best, he loves to just venture forward and end up in the box for some reason. He might do that if they're chasing a goal and it's still 0-0. 20 minutes to go, you bring on Werner, and that Real Madrid defensive line, they need to drop off, because if Werner's on the pitch, very similar to the Torres situation against Barcelona, where in 2012, where they were chasing, but because we had that pace with Torres on the break, and I think he came on in that game, didn't he? And he had that pace to just burn. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to manage your fitness or whatnot. You've got 20 minutes, just go out there and be a nuisance. That pace in behind, you could easily see Werner late on in the game, big hoof up the pitch, long ball, running in behind, and then hopefully he takes the finish, and then you've got a similar situation to what you had in 2012. So I'm leaning towards Kai, because we have to be efficient. But yeah, it's very difficult to choose from for Thomas Tuchel as well. So I think that out of all the positions, that's probably the only area where there's probably some sort of debate. I want to talk about
also,
go for it.
Aspie at right wing back. But just before I get into that, I wanted to add one more point. I think how we're talking about the substitutes, I feel like Ziyech and Timo Werner together could be a really great substitute pairing. I feel like they've been starting to get some more chemistry together, and we've seen that Timo is actually assisting Ziyech as well. And I know he's assisting other players, but I just kind of felt like they were gaining the most chemistry. So I think that could be an interesting tactic for the second half. And the other interesting, I've said that a lot, but the other point is that I've been debating is who starts at right wing back, because I think it's going to be Aspie. Yeah. But I could totally understand if Reece James starts as well, and I would be very happy with that. But a lot of people are saying, Reece is going to start, but I think Aspie is probably going to start from experience, and he was rested against Fulham.
Yeah, that's actually a very good thing to bring up, actually. Someone's saying here, why not start Giroud over Havertz? I think for me, it's very clear that Tuchel wants fluidity in the attack, players that can interchange. There was a really good thread that went up on Twitter about the way that defensively, the way that we defend from the front. It's much easier to defend from the front when you have players that are interchangeable, that can take up different positions, that can cover different places in the press. Because if you have a natural, pretty stagnant striker like Giroud, he's not going to press, first of all, because he's not quick enough to do so. And then second of all, Giroud on the left channel or the right channel doesn't work. Whereas Werner, he can go out wide in those wide positions and cause havoc. Havertz can be interchangeable. Ziyech has taken up many central areas like we saw against Man City, Atletico Madrid with the goals. Mason Mount, we know the same. He can go out wide. I've said so many times, Mason Mount in that right channel, he can cause problems. So I think he just wants... The fact that Giroud's not world-class, in my opinion, Tammy's not world-class either. They're not going to give you Haaland, Lukaku, Harry Kane output with the goals. He's not sacrificing them for the overall picture of trying to press. So, yeah, I think that I want to ask Daniel, because it's a really good point that Elizabeth brought up about the right wing back. What have you made of Azpilicueta playing in that position? Because for me, I think in a big game like the Real Madrid game, I can see why he might do it, to be cautious. And I think Christensen's been great. And I think Christensen's kind of forced him to do it, because Christensen's been so good, you can't really drop him. Once you get Thiago Silva back in the team, and it kind of gives you an extra ball playing centre back as well, which we know is crucial. Just so much going on there. So what do you make of it in terms of Azpi playing right wing back?
Yeah, Dave has been an incredible player for Chelsea, and still is, obviously. And he's one of those players that just talk about big game players. You can understand why Tuchel went for him. My only frustration last week was the positions, because the wing backs last week against Real Madrid's basically a 3-4-3 trying to match us up. There were so many times where Dave got into such good positions where I was like, if Reece is on the pitch and getting into these positions, we can be much more devastating. It's once again, I think I do agree that's the other place on the pitch really that I think is up for debate, because you'd of course want Dave in the team. I think he's in the team somewhere. I think it's either at right wing back or right centre back. I can't see him not. He got full rest, didn't he, on Saturday? So he's going to be in this team. It depends on what Real Madrid are doing. I mean, I think it really helped Chelsea last week, the way Real Madrid were playing, that there was so much space in behind their midfield. Our creativity wasn't coming from our midfield. It was coming from our back three. The way Thiago Silva and Rudiger and Christensen were able to press up. It was mainly coming through Thiago Silva and Rudiger, because they're better with balls over the top than Christensen is. Christensen's much better at sort of short passing. So I think that those two in particular, I think that it would be really tough on Christensen. Christensen has, I've given him lots of criticism and doubted him in the past. He's been incredible. He really has. And it'd be really harsh on him to not play this game after all the brilliant form. But I don't know. I just think Reece has worked so well this season. And I think that he's done so much defensively, the way he's improved his defensive game, and offensively, creatively. I mean, you spoke about Kai Havertz there. I mean, you think about the height.
Yeah.
We haven't really seen it, but if Reece could put in a cross to say Kai Havertz, and if Real Madrid allow us space for the wing backs to get forward again, that could give Reece the opportunity to be really devastating creatively. So
yeah,
I may just lean towards Reece James at right wing back and put Dave at right centre back, and then I'd probably have Thiago and Rudiger as the other two. Another shout I would bring up, and this is not going to be as popular with Ramos. If Ramos is playing, Kurt Zouma is a name that's been brought up, because we're not quite sure if it is. We have to wait to see tomorrow's press conference with Tuchel if Rudiger is fully ready to go.
Yeah.
If Rudiger isn't ready to go, two reasons I want Kurt Zouma is to defend set pieces, because I think we were quite shaky at set pieces last week, but also to score from set pieces, because when we don't have Kurt on the pitch, I mean, anytime we get a corner or some sort of cross into the box, I don't get as excited. It's a waste of time. And once again, fine margins, that this could, you think about the amount of goals Kurt has scored.
He scored a lot of goals, this season, yeah.
Mason Mount, his corner, because our corner taking ability has got a lot better. Our corner delivery has got a lot better because of Mason Mount. Yeah. That could be another area. But, Rudiger's been so amazing. All across the pitch, there are positions where you're like, there's a few certain positions where I'm like, yeah, this guy's starting every single game for us at the moment. I think there's 3 non-negotiables at the moment. And I think those are Mendy, Chilwell and Mount. I think those are the 3 that for me have to be starting every single game at the moment, because they're the 3 out. I think Chilwell, of course, had a little dip in the middle of the season, but I think those are those 3 players that I trust for every single game. And then there are these other positions where Tuchel has to make calls. Is he going to be more conservative with a Dave? Will he put him there and think, I'll have that defensive solidity, or does he feel that we need to score a goal? We need to be a bit more offensive. But he has got 5 subs, doesn't he? So he could bring Reece off the bench like he has in previous games.
It's very intriguing because Thiago Silva doesn't usually play this amount of games back to back like he had to play at the weekend. And a lot of people are saying in the chat, will he play? Because he's obviously had to play at the weekend, and there's not a lot of time in between the games.
Thiago doesn't want to miss Champions League semi-finals. We bought Thiago Silva for this
semi-final. Like that's what he was brought in to do. So I think that Thiago has to play. I think Azpilicueta is probably going to play, but we just don't know where. I could honestly argue for both sides, and I can see both sides because, if he plays at a right wing back, then you have taller center backs to defend set pieces. And Tuchel has spoken about this, that Azpilicueta is a bit of a shorter center back. Yeah. So it gives you more height in set pieces. But then also, if you are defending a 0-0 or you're defending a lead against Real Madrid, maybe you want to sub on an Azpilicueta who's going to put their body on the line for the last 20 minutes of the game. Yeah. So I really don't know which way Tuchel's going to go. I have a feeling Aspi's probably going to start because he's our captain. But, I could see it going either way, honestly.
I think what we'll see is we'll see Aspi at right wing back, but I would prefer Reece James at right wing back because, like you said, I think we lose too much going forward, and I think Aspi, from a crossing perspective, has always been better in the right channel under Conte, and now even in the back three. I don't mind him crossing when he's in that midfield in the inverted position for a fullback because he can kind of just get it out of his feet and just clip it in. And he found Morata a lot that way. But when he's on the byline, it's just not the same. It's a different technique you need out there. Trent's very good at it. Reece James is very good at it as well. And I think going forward, we're just sacrificing too much with Aspi at right wing back. And also, which has been brought up by the chat, which I was going to bring up as well, which is a great point. If Mendy is back, it's not Marcelo. Marcelo athletically has gone down. Obviously, he's getting a lot older. He's more of he's a baller. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to run you ragged, but he is a baller. And I think, Aspi can potentially deal with that. But Mendy athletically is very good. He can go both ways. He's a bit of a dribbler as well. He did very well in the previous round as well. And for me, I think Mendy can be a problem if we don't have some sort of speed going up against him or some sort of physicality. And I think it's a big moment for Reece James to just come and boss it and really show what he can do against one of the best fullbacks in the world. I think Mendy at Real Madrid is probably the Mendy that Man City thought they were getting. Do you know what I mean? He's really that good. He's brilliant on the ball. He can go both ways, cutting on his right foot as well. He's scored a few goals. I think Mendy is a big, everyone speaks about Ramos because obviously Ramos is a legendary defender. We know his goal scoring record in the Champions League knockouts. We know his goal against Atletico Madrid in the final as well to equalise. He's a big game player as well, and he's going to be a big addition. But Mendy at left back is going to be a problem if we don't look at the difference between him and Marcelo, because it is a big difference. And obviously Marcelo, I think, has got polling station duty. And I was just saying on a previous stream that if Mason Mount or any of these key players had a jury duty or something on the Champions League final, I swear to God, I would lose my mind. Like I honestly couldn't even imagine having to deal with that situation as a fan. Something so random like that, which is just
that was real.
yeah, he's really got polling station duties. Yeah, I think he's
who has it?
Marcelo. So he's not
no way.
Yeah, I mean, I think Real Madrid obviously Real Madrid tried to get him out of it, but if Mendy's fit, then it's not a huge problem. But yeah, Mendy definitely caused Liverpool a lot of problems. So I'm really wary of him. I think when we speak about Christensen as well, I think Christensen is one of those players that, like you said, Daniel, for me, I had serious doubts about but we actually kind of maybe forget how young he is for a centre back. He's still very, very young. I just had a lot of doubts about his mentality in the big games, and whether he could really handle the pressure. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, we know the Barcelona moment that gets talked about a lot, but even, with him being unwell at times and all these things, it just didn't feel like he was, because I like my centre backs to be, yes, of course, ball playing, and he's brilliant at that, but I want them to be leaders. That's when Chelsea was built on leaders at the back, whether it be John Terry, Ivanovic, Cahill, even Alex was an absolute beast. You need that back there. Diaz at Man City, yes, Pep loved to play beautiful football, but he's been a leader alongside Stones. So credit to him and credit to Chilwell, because like you said, he's one of the names that are guaranteed starters. And finally, for me, he's now undisputed at left back. I had so much worrying, and I criticised him a lot because I didn't feel like he should have been a rotational option, you know. And obviously he came out publicly, said he was adapting to the left wing back role. And for me personally, when we spend that kind of money, and I know it's not great to ever bring in the price, but it's something that will always get brought up because when you spend money, that's the investment you put in. Same with Kepa, same with any other big name. And that's partly the reason why I do worry about splashing on players sometimes, is because the price is always involved. And if you can find cheaper alternatives like Leicester and Liverpool, it does take the pressure off a bit. But now he's not being rotated. He's being really good. And he played a brilliant pass on the weekend, left foot switch of play. Can't remember who it was to. Maybe you guys will remember.
It was in the build up to the second goal.
Yeah.
It was the ball over the top to Kai Havertz. Kai Havertz takes it down, lays it off to Timo. Timo then lays it back to him and he scores second goal.
Yeah.
I agree. Chilwell's been I have to say, when he was going through a difficult period, I still backed him because I just felt Marcos Alonso was not going to be able to maintain the form. And I felt that with Ben, you can play him against kind of all opposition. You know, I think there is a sense with Marcos Alonso that he works against some opposition, doesn't against others. I think it's been wonderful to see Chilwell's development. I mean, I think if you just Chilwell, like a lot of he sort of summarizes Chelsea this season. He started really well. He started really, really well for Chelsea. Had a bad 2 months basically, maybe in terms of I think he had an injury during them. Struggled to get back into the team, but then it's pretty much been really good. I mean, I think if you were to analyze his full season, of course, we've got a few games left to go. I think he's had a really good season, actually. Not an outstanding season. He's not Mason Mount levels. He's not going to be player of the season, but I think for his first season at Chelsea, I actually think he's been overall impressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's one of those players where you really want him to do well because his personality is top notch. His attitude is top notch as well. And we've been struggling at left back since Ashley Cole. I would love to just not have that issue anymore. We've gone from Aspie there. Felipe Luis obviously wasn't getting too much game time at that point. We know Babaram was brought in at some point as well. Kennedy even. I'm bringing out real names out of the out of the archives here. And obviously Alonso and Emerson, and it's just been a whirlwind. And I'm not a fan of rotating defenders too much unless they're Thiago Silva, and obviously there's special requirements there because obviously he's aging. But I think a good team is always built off their defense foundations first, and I think Tuchel's been really good to notice that, partly because the attack is not clinical, but also because defense can keep you in games. And I think long may it continue where there's just no rotations back there. I think as the years go on, Aspie will probably become more of a peripheral figure. Maybe he'll take up a Gary Cahill kind of role as well, and Reece James will probably be a little bit more consistently in the team as well. I wanted to get you guys' take on Callum Hudson-Odoi, because that was the one guy I think over the weekend that people were up in arms about. Because Tammy, at this point, I think people kind of accepted the situation, so no one's really going crazy about that anymore. But I think Hudson-Odoi is a strange one because he's been really looked after, and kind of everyone built up this image in their head at the start of it, you know, all the hugs and, you know what I mean? They had like a really good bond, and he started a lot of games at right wing back, and then suddenly he's gone missing since that Southampton game, and we haven't seen him too much since. Elizabeth, what's your take on it? Because there's one side of the argument that he's being used as this Phil Foden, you know, gem, train him, look after him behind the scenes. You're not going to see too much of him. Yeah, there's a lot of media pressure, but we're going to get there in the end. And then there's the other half of people saying, listen, Bayern Munich will come calling again. His camp might not be the most patient. If we lose him, we know we're going to regret it. So where do you kind of sit in between all this?
Well, I think right now he's on like a pretty long-term contract, right? So it's going to be pretty hard for any team to buy him, or it's going to be a lot more money than it would have been. But yeah, it's an interesting one because when Tuchel first started with Chelsea, it seemed that Callum was going to be his guy, and we were going to see Callum playing more at the right wing back role, or even as one of the two in the front, or whatever you want to call it. But I think, you know, partly a reason, like partly Christensen being so good affects Callum, because that means that there's that Azpilicueta and Reece James are fighting for that right wing back role. So then you just like push him down the ranks even more. And I think that he might be just more of like, you guys always say like a victim of circumstance, but the system that Chelsea are currently playing doesn't really suit him all that well. Like, I don't think it's going to be in his best interest to be playing as a right wing back for his career. He looked good, but I don't see him there like
long
in
term.
the future, long term.
Yeah.
And then in the front, you just have so much competition. And I think, part of it could also be that you have like these big money signings that you're going to want to play because you spent a lot of money on them, but also because, I don't know. It's difficult. You have these big games, and at a certain point, you have certain players that are playing more, and they gain chemistry with one another. And then it gets more difficult to get into the side because you don't want to just throw somebody in who hasn't played a couple of games and doesn't have as much match fitness or isn't as like clear, and you know what I mean, like in what they want to do. So it's a difficult one. I think we're probably not going to see much more of him for the rest of the season because all of the games that Chelsea have are just absolutely massive. But I do hope that Tuchel examines it and looks at the personnel that he has. And I think that next season we could potentially see more of a change of formation or just more flexibility in the formation, because you don't have to play 5 at the back against every single side. Like you just don't. Against sides that you know that you're going to have more of the ball, you can play 4 at the back and then have an attacking option on the pitch. So I hope that we kind of see more of that in the future, and that will give Callum the opportunity to get back into the team.
Yeah, it's a good point you mentioned about, I think it's funny because the more games you don't play, the further away you get from playing, because then your match fitness comes down. I think we kind of seen that with Tammy. He came on at the weekend, but he just really didn't get a touch. He kind of didn't really look in the game, and you can't really blame him because he's not getting any minutes. So it kind of just, but then that's your case to state where you should be in the team, and you can't do it because you're not really there, and it kind of just continues to add on more and more. And against West Ham again, I think he came on, he missed a header. I think it was too high for him anyway, in my personal opinion anyway. But even still, you're coming on to make an impact. You have to use those minutes. But if you don't, because of your match fitness, you get further and further away. So, I mean, Daniel, what do you make of it? Because there's a lot of panic, I think, from some sections of the fan base because they know how talented he is. How do you feel about it?
I'm conflicted because I thought he was going to play on Saturday, actually. I thought it was the sort of game that you'd bring Callum in, in terms of the rotation. The way Callum has been used, sort of a template I was thinking about for Saturday's game was what Tuchel did against Crystal Palace. And this is before, of course, he used a new formation. When he used that formation on Saturday, I could understand then why Callum wasn't in the team, because with only one sort of holding midfielder in Billy Gilmore, you needed the fullback, the wing backs to tuck in a little bit more. We needed that defensive protection. And if Callum's playing basically as a right winger, when he's playing as a right wing back, he doesn't really play as a wing back. He plays as a right winger. Yeah. We could have been exposed a little bit more against Fulham. So I can understand that. I've been really intrigued because as that right wing back, which I don't think is his long-term role, but it's a role that he, I think, has done quite well in when he's actually, if you actually analyze Callum's performances, in particular that Crystal Palace game, because we were so focused on the front three of Pulisic, Mount and Havertz, Callum was a big part of that. The way we switched the ball from left to right. Yeah. He's always free. Mason, it usually comes from Ben Chilwell, who then lays it into Pulisic, who turns, finds Mount on the half turn. He drives forward, and always against like that narrow back four of Crystal Palace, he had Hudson-Odoi always in space on that right. And it created a great outlet for us on that side to really stretch the pitch and go from left to right, and usually crossing the ball back towards the left for Pulisic or Havertz to finish. I'm intrigued by the reaction and discussion about Hudson-Odoi. I do think there is, maybe people are seeing different things to me. I think there is a little bit of hypocrisy, because I remember at the start of this season, in the first few weeks, I know it feels a very long time ago, Lampard didn't start Callum for several games. I think it was, I can't remember how many it was, but there was, once again, it was getting to the near the end of the transfer window. There was rumors about Bayern coming back in for him, and people were like, he's being misused, we should just sell him. And that's constantly been a word used to describe Callum Hudson-Odoi. People were saying he should have been playing at the back end of last season. I think context, you look at the context of the performances of Pulisic and Willian, with the formation we were playing at the time, he wasn't going to get in front of either of those two. But I think he was just coming back from an injury as well. Not as much talk about that at the moment in terms of him being misused, I don't think, unless I'm not seeing stuff.
It's there a little bit, but not maybe not as heavily, though.
I think we know why, because Tuchel's doing so well, and that's because he's getting great results. So there's always going to be a sense that, despite some people, maybe having preferences towards players, they're not. There's always that thing where people turn around. It's like things I say about Tammy, to defend Tammy at the moment. People are being like, oh, Tuchel's doing so well. It's like people can hold two thoughts at the same time. I can be disappointed about Tammy's treatment, but also be ecstatic with what Thomas Tuchel's doing for Chelsea. And I think for Callum, it's just a little bit bizarre. I think the discussion around him at the moment, it's weird. I mean, he's still so young, and this has been one of his best seasons at Chelsea when you actually analyze his performances. But he was that player at the start of Tuchel's reign that you felt this is going to be like a project player for Tuchel to work with and improve. And I've been a little bit frustrated, a bit like Gilmour, that at times we haven't seen him further up the pitch. I remember against Everton, he played at left wing, and he was really good that night, because I think Callum's final third passing is really impressive for a young player. I still think there is that discussion about what type of winger Hudson-Odoi is as a young player. I think there's maybe a bit of confusion around what is his best element. Is he more of a Ziyech creative winger, or is he more of a Pulisic goal-scoring winger, if that makes sense? And I think he falls more into the Ziyech category of, I think he's more of a creator, actually. It's what's happening to Tammy at the moment. It's what's going to happen, unfortunately, to young players. Chelsea, unfortunately, the nature of what Chelsea is and what Chelsea are, with the constant demand to win trophies, with the constant demand for new signings to come in every single summer, there are going to be victims. Now, that doesn't always mean that those players aren't good enough for Chelsea. I think if Tammy leaves this summer, I don't really want to hear arguments that Tammy isn't good enough for Chelsea. I just think that's the circumstance of what it is at the time. I don't think Tammy's done anything wrong to be out the team. And I think it may be the same case for Callum. I don't know where really we go from here. But the one thing I will say, and this has been, I've been proven wrong time and time again, and I think we all have around when we have discussions around players with Tuchel, don't write players off this season. And maybe we're getting to a stage where the starting 11 is quite settled now, because we're at that stage where a manager wants their sort of set starting 11. But I've done it many times where I've been asked questions on my channel. I spoke about Ziyech when he was out of the team. I spoke about Pulisic when he was out of the team. And it's literally like a game later, the players coming back in and having a big performance. And then the whole debate changes. But I think for Callum, there is going to be that concern that it could be another Kevin De Bruyne situation. And I think there's going to be a breaking point, isn't there? If at this point next season, Callum's still not playing regularly. And I don't know if I think I was listening to a Byline podcast where I think it was Alex was talking about this, where it was like, under several managers now, we've seen Callum come in, be given an opportunity, and then taken out. And he's not questioning Callum's character. It's just maybe something that tactically a coach doesn't like in Callum, or doesn't trust him to play him every single week. Is there something beyond just the quality of the player that's clearly there? And as well, context. And again, Reece James, a bit like Willian and Pulisic last season, and Tuchel wants to win big games, so as much as I may want to see a bit more of Callum, am I going to have him in front of Reece James? No. Am I going to have him in front of Christian Pulisic? No. I may have him in front of Timo Werner at times, yes, in a front three. But this is the difficult part of being Chelsea. And if we splash more money on the attack in the summer, that's only going to hurt Callum's chances, isn't it? Especially if we go to a back four again.
Yeah. I think the only difference that I'll allude to from earlier in the season is obviously the formation was slightly different with the 4-3-3. And I think when you have those natural wingers, I think there's definitely a bigger case for him to play, because I remember looking at the start of the season, for natural wingers, we only had Ziyech, Pulisic, and Hudson-Odoi in the squad. That's three players for two positions. I never really saw Timo Werner as a winger. I always thought of him as a second striker or a hybrid. And I remember a lot of the time then as well, people were talking about Timo Werner needs to go right up front as a solution to our problems. And I also didn't agree with that. I don't think Timo Werner's your natural number 9 lone striker, especially not every single game. Yes, high line against Liverpool at Anfield, 100% played very well. Didn't get a goal contribution, but played very well. Had a goal ruled out that probably was a goal, wasn't offside. But not every single game will I play Timo Werner up front on his own. And I think Callum could have got one of those wing spots. But right now, as you're saying, now that you're playing with tucked in 10s, I think Mason Mount, as opposed to when Mason Mount was playing right on the wing, which is near the byline, I didn't like that as much. Now he's playing in this inverted role. I think Mason Mount centrally is always the main goal here. You don't really want him out wide, right on the touchline. I think you need to have him involved, getting touches in the half spaces, moving around and pulling people out of position, whether that's in the 8 going forward or in the double 10 or whatever. So I think, we've spoken about before, Mason Mount can't come out this team. because I think he's the only individual that can move back into midfield and actually do that job. Let me read out this super chat here. We're going to wrap up soon, people. Werner better than Hudson-Odoi. Different players, in my opinion. But he says he has more goal involvements. Again, that's not, for me, the only way to look at things. But Hudson-Odoi was not rated by Lampard or Conte. Only Sarri played him more. I think, again, Conte, he was there. Conte, first of all, I think Callum would have been about 17. Second of all, I think Conte's mandate was not to push young players. He was definitely here for the here and now, winning trophies and using the experience. And you've even seen it into Milan, Ashley Young, players like that. He's bringing through. He wants winners. You're
not allowed to be under 25 in Conte's squad.
Alexis Sanchez and Vidal, and it's just like he doesn't want a young team. So that's just the Conte way. So I don't think it's fair to judge any young player on Conte's usage of them, because that's not his mandate. His mandate is to win and then bounce. Sarri obviously used him a bit in the Europa League. I think Bradley Hudson-Odoi was speaking a lot about his willingness to not have Callum move out on loan that summer that Sarri joined, because he believed that he could break through. And obviously we're seeing similar with Billy not going out on loan yet as well. And then, Lampard, for me, I don't think Lampard, again, people say Lampard didn't rate him. I don't really believe that. I think Lampard did rate him. It's just, again, it's the balance of things at the time, the context. Like Daniel said, Willian last season was having the season of his life. He probably had the best season he's ever had at Chelsea because he wanted that new contract. He didn't get it, but he was playing unbelievably well. Pulisic towards the end of the season was unplayable. So there's a lot of different factors that come into it. Obviously,
could I just say quickly on the show, January, I remember being on a lot of your streams at the time when it started to go really wrong under Frank. That was the moment where this is Callum's time. That's the moment where there's no excuse not to play him, because he was coming on for 15 minutes against Fulham and impressing. That was the moment where, there's no one in front of him that shouldn't, that should be playing ahead of him. He's a form player at the moment. So it's not like players being rated. It's like, I saw it under Tuchel like 2 weeks in. Some people saying he doesn't rate this player, he doesn't rate that player. I mean, we don't know. And context is so big in football. At the time of why these players playing, the results as well. If the results are going well with players, what do you want to drop good players, informed players? So you're telling me people would want to drop Christian Pulisic last season when he was banging form for Callum Hudson-Odoi? I think it's all a bit revisionist history, really. I think you need to look at the context of the player at the time. Sometimes sometimes there's a really good form player, but he's just at a club with a better form player who, for whatever reason, injury, luck plays a big part in professional football. And maybe the luck isn't on Callum Hudson-Odoi's side at Chelsea because of the injury problems he's had, because of the change in manager, because of the whatever it is.
Yeah, it's similar to Dortmund when Pulisic was there and he got that injury and Sancho came in and took over and he couldn't get back in the team. I think that moment you're speaking about, that Christmas to January period, that's where, for me, that was where the heat turned up, where Callum should have been playing, because he was playing poorly and he was actually playing well in the impact he had, and he still didn't get the game time. Does it mean that he overall didn't rate him? I don't think that's true. I don't think it's possible not to rate Callum as a manager. I don't think there's any manager who doesn't rate him. If Bayern Munich with their scouting system rate you, I think most managers will rate you. But I think he definitely just didn't manage him very well there, mismanaged him quite poorly. But to wrap up, I mean, listen, obviously I'm going to be talking about this game even more tomorrow, guys. But I want to get some. Do I want to get some score predictions? Do I want to do that? Do we want to do that? Maybe we won't do that because I don't want to jinx anything. I don't want to jinx it. But I guess, how do you see the game going, Elizabeth, without the score prediction? Just your whole feeling and vibe towards the game. How are you feeling going into it?
I mean, I always joke about this, but I am always very nervous going into Chelsea games. Like, it could be against Fulham or Real Madrid. I'm always very nervous going into games. But I think the thing for me is that, like, I didn't expect Chelsea to even get that far in this competition. So it's just like so fantastic to see us in a semi-final again. But that being said, I'm still going to be nervous shitless, but that doesn't really make sense. My brain, I'm
shitting myself, to be honest.
Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. So it's late here. I haven't eaten. But I think that Real Madrid are a very experienced side, and that's what I'm nervous about, that they have so much Champions League experience that they might fall back on that and rely on that and say, oh, well, we're Real Madrid, we win these games. But I do think that Chelsea, go into the game with a slight advantage, having scored that away goal, but it's not going to be an easy game by any means. It's going to be really cagey, I think, really nerve-wracking. But do I think that Chelsea can squeeze the win out? I think so. I think we can. But we're probably more underdogs, but I think we can do it.
I mean, these guys are throwing in their score predictions. Listen, I'm not going to create any bad luck around here, so I'm going to keep my mouth tightly shut. But Roadcast is 3-1 on aggregate. Werner Havertz to score. Chelsea. Okay, listen, if that happens, I'll be over the moon. That sounds like not a stress-free night, but it sounds a lot less stressful than I was planning. I mean, Daniel, what do you think, bro? How are you going into this? Because I'm nervous.
Yeah, I mean, the nerves have started to kick in. And funny enough, the nerves started to kick in when I watched Chelsea women yesterday against Bayern Munich. Astonishing game. I was actually editing a video whilst watching it, and I had to quit editing. I was just like stood in front of the TV for like the final 3 minutes because it was crazy, that game, and wonderful to see Chelsea women get through to the Champions League final. And then following that, BT had, it was perfect timing, had the story of Munich, and it was the Munich final. And of course, brought back a load of memories about 2012. It still feels quite surreal. We could be in a Champions League final. There doesn't seem to be the high stakes around it personally for me in terms of like the same emotion and the same drama that we had in 2012. I don't know if that's because it's not going to be a full Stamford Bridge, and that's a bit upsetting because I could you imagine Stamford Bridge?
But I have to say, do you feel like if the fans were there, the players would feel even more pressure? Because I know if I was like, you would feel that nervous, like you'd either get the 12th man or you get the nerves and like.
True, you know but I don't know. I think I look at the Atletico Madrid win at home, and I think over the past year it's been quite upsetting actually when we've had all of our best wins, and we've had quite a few of them under Tuchel. Every time that game, a big win, Man City in the semi-final, Atletico Madrid. You want fans there. It's like that one missing element. It was just a bit bizarre last week. It's a Champions League semi-final first leg, and it's being played at a training ground, and it's like, that Pulisic goal
twice in 1 year. I have not been able to go to a game like that. It's just
I wanted to play it around Madrid.
Yeah, because you're in Madrid.
So long.
I'm in Madrid, for anybody who doesn't know. So I was like trying to stock out the players. I found that they put the hotel that they're at on the news, and I was like, oh my God, maybe I just casually walk into them. I was like, how disappointed. Like, I would have bought tickets immediately because it's not like I can go walking to Stamford Bridge. Then we played the two Madrid teams and couldn't go.
God, twice. That is actually heartbreaking. Jesus Christ, But
I was just gonna say, I think like the maybe because like for the 2012 team, there was a sense that was like their last chance to win the Champions League, and we've got a very young team here, and it's you feel like this team under Tuchel especially could be here again. But I was thinking earlier with Tuchel and with the way Chelsea operates, you may not get another chance. We don't know what Chelsea's going to be like in 12 months. We may have another new head coach. There's just the way Chelsea operates, man. So this is, and it Tuchel narratively. He got to the Champions League final last year, and he's got a chance within 2 games now to put himself as one of, I wouldn't say the greatest managers in Chelsea history, because of course he's only been here a couple months, but in terms of winning the Champions League for this club, you are putting yourself very high on that list emotionally for fans.
You're putting yourself on a pedestal.
You're putting yourself on your pedestal.
Like, it's not coming down.
Within 4 months, he could take Chelsea to a Champions League. It's just absolutely ridiculous. It really is, and an FA Cup as well potentially. So, I think the game, just based on what I've seen from Tuchel, it's going to be really tight. It's going to be cagey. I do, as Elizabeth said, I think that experience level of Real Madrid of Benzema that you saw last week, of especially Sergio Ramos. I think Zidane's going to move back to a 4-3-3. I think Kroos, Casemiro, and Modric will be the 3 in midfield. We've forgotten about Eden Hazard, of course.
Hazard played in the weekend. He played as a
Hazard 10. Could still break our hearts.
He played.
So it's not. I mean, I'm sitting here right now. It's still hard to believe we've got to this stage this season. I think people won't want to hear this because it's not like, Chelsea, standards or whatever. But I think it's actually just an achievement that we've got finally to a Champions League semi-final again. You know, Tuchel has, for whatever you want to say about how he's improved Chelsea in this particular season from January, he's broke like kudos that 3 of his predecessors haven't done. You know, he's doing things at the moment that I haven't seen for quite a while at Chelsea. And you hope the experience, whether it's good or bad on Wednesday, will hopefully influence the players. And it's why Chelsea need to guarantee top 4, you know, because and hopefully, man, if we get to Istanbul, I don't know what I'm going to do on Wednesday night and Thursday morning if we get to the Champions League final, because it is the biggest game in club football. There's no higher achievement in winning the Champions League.
Yeah, I mean, we're literally a Brighton dull game away from the Champions League final, and it's funny because Chelsea have been to quite a few semi-finals, but our record in the semi-final isn't great. We've only got to 2 finals, obviously the Moscow one and then the Munich one as well. So this will only be our 3rd final. And I think, I mean, this is the one time where I don't like to speak for other fans, but I think this is the one time where I can say that Champions League final is probably the greatest night in every Chelsea fan's life. Like for me, I remember that night, and I was just when the ball hit the back of the net, I just lost it completely, because we've seen so many like Ballack and so many eras of teams where we actually had better teams previously that couldn't quite get it done. And even though you speak about how young this team is and they can go again, Aspie can't go again. And, well, he might not go again.
Thiago Silva, one of the greats of the game, could potentially. And Olivier Giroud. I mean, just on a side note, Giroud could pick up. It's like Ross Turnbull picking up a Champions League medal in 2012. Like Tammy Abraham could pick himself a Champions League medal as well.
There's so many, like, there's still so many players where this could be their last chance, especially Aspie. I think for Aspie, for how great he's been and how consistent he's been as a Chelsea legend, and the work that he's put in at this club to just maintain his standards and literally just be an absolute real role model, really, because he hasn't slipped up once. Do you know what I mean? His shirt's always tucked in. I don't think I've ever seen it not. So to have a Champions League for him would just be incredible, and he would obviously get to lift it, and that would be surreal. You'd have Aspie, and you'd have Mason and maybe Jorginho or Thiago Silva. Like, it would be quite the picture, because they've all had their struggles and doubts. And well, Thiago Silva's always been legendary. Aspie's always been legendary. Mason Mount's had his critics. Jorginho's had his critics, but everybody, those 4 together, that photo would be crazy. The Cobham boys, that photo would be even crazier. So yeah, man, it's just we're very, very close. And
you're getting me too hyped up, Matisse.
I'm just saying, I'm Kante as well. I'm very nervous, and I think the reason why is because I know we can beat Real Madrid. Like, they are beatable. But I think
there's actually we can actually do it. I'm like, it's actually like, that's the nerves, isn't it? Because I was
it's not Barcelona and it's not Bayern.
It's not. There's actually there's many people saying that Chelsea should be winning this game. Like I saw an article last week saying Chelsea should prepare to win the second leg, and I'm like, what? Like, this is Real Madrid. Like, it's a bit surreal. So
it's crazy. Like, every rival fan I've spoken to, so they think we're actually going to win it, but they definitely think we're going to go through. And it's that kind of confidence that I'm not okay with, because I'm used to being the underdog. So I'm not best pleased that everybody's so confident. But I think that the key thing to highlight here is that, like I said last week, this is going to be a very different game. I think not only the personnel, but also the approach, the formation that you spoke about, the way that Real Madrid are going to come at this game with the new personnel that they've got coming into the team. A fit, a Hazard, a Mendy, a Ramos, no Varane. There'll be a few changes. So it's just going to be a different game entirely. So that's why I'm so nervous about it. Because I feel like even though it was a good result out of Madrid, we didn't fully capitalize on the situation and come back home. But let's see what happens, guys. That's really the end of the stream. It's been a great one. We've spoken about so many different things, which has been great to get it all out there. And like I said, the next time I'll speak to you will be a preview of Alex Goldberg tomorrow, probably after the press conference, where we'll just only talk about Real Madrid and maybe the striker situation in terms of the transfer market, because I think it's quite interesting how these guys that we built up on our heads that are probably going to be available are probably not. And you might actually have to get a sneaky, option in there. A bit of striker scouting we might have to do. But Son of Chelsea, bro, Daniel, let them know where to find you. Obviously, links in the description, and let them know about the content you've got coming up.
Yeah, thank you, mate. So yeah, just Son of Chelsea on YouTube. Uploaded a video today, like daily content, obviously, as we get closer to the end of the season. I hope that I'll be writing a title on Wednesday night that says Chelsea beat Real Madrid, because ever since I started my channel, I wanted to be able to make a video about that. So a dream could become a reality on Wednesday. So yeah, Son of Chelsea on YouTube, Son of Chelsea on Instagram. I've been obviously joining the boycott on Twitter, but obviously I'll be back on Twitter before the game. And so yeah, Son of Chelsea there as well. So thanks for having me on. And hopefully the gap between coming on this channel, it won't be as long, and hopefully 100%. We'll be speaking as European champions maybe.
I don't know what we're going to do as a Chelsea community, but if we do get to the Champions League final, there's got to be something with the creators. Like, I don't know, me and Eunice was talking about it before off air, where we did like this live stream that could kind of be put on everyone's channel at the same time. I don't know if that's possible, but I feel like you can stream and then place it on everyone's channel at the same time, and like every content creator, like George, you, Elizabeth, Dammy, everybody together watching the game. And
Avengers Assemble.
Yeah, Avengers Assemble kind of thing. It would be sweet. Elizabeth, let them know where to find you. Thanks so much. Obviously, link is in the description, and any content coming out that you want to let them know about.
So if you don't follow me on Twitter at Eli_Helenek, because I couldn't fit my entire name, and I also have a YouTube channel as well, pushing for 5K, so that's super exciting. And yeah, I have like a bunch of guests scheduled for the end of the season, so that's very cool. And I have a weekly FPL show with Olivia Buzzaglo, so if you like FPL, we're totally obsessed, and we go through a lot of tips and tricks and basically everything you need to know. And yeah, occasionally you'll see me on Premier League today as well. So
occasionally, all the time. So guys, make sure you check that out. Links in the description.
You just make me laugh so much. I always have such a fun time on your channel because I'm always just like my mouth hurts from laughing so much.
I appreciate that. Listen, we try and make it fun. It's a great time to be a Chelsea fan. Obviously, it's not always fun here. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm very angry. Like if we're going through a hard time, I can't really hold that back. But we're having a great time at the moment. We're in all competitions. We're in the final of the FA Cup. We could win something this season. It could be Mason's first trophy. Reese's, all these guys, Thiago. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a great end to the season. I think we'll get something out of it. And it's been a joyride. And obviously, then the Euros is coming up and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, guys. I mean, listen. Make sure you subscribe. Obviously, like I said, tomorrow Alex will be on. We'll be discussing Real Madrid even more. Obviously, the press conference would have happened, so we'll be getting the final details there before the build-up. And then next time you see me after that will be Damien and Anita, and we will either be heartbroken, or you probably won't hear a word. I will probably have champagne or something. There will be something going on because if we get to the final, talk about achievements. That would be a massive achievement for this squad. Just how young they are, and really at this level, quite unproven, a lot of them. So yeah, it would be unreal. So big up to the chat. Bambo, appreciate your comment, bro, and all the other guys that left great comments about the show. And guys, I will see you tomorrow after the press conference, probably maybe 1:30. Obviously of Tuchel. It depends how late Tuchel is, really, of how lateness is greatness will go. But yeah, in a bit, people. Thanks so much. See you in a bit. Perfect.